Senator Susan Collins just asked the Attorney General a series of pointed questions about a nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. The money comes from the Judgment Fund, traditionally used for specific claims that already exist, not for future claims that haven't been brought yet.
Amounts in the Judgment Fund have traditionally been used for the payment of specific claims against the government or amounts owed for the settlement of those claims, but not for future claims that have yet to be bought.
The Attorney General's defense? The Obama administration did something similar for Native Americans, but that fund was for a specific victim class with documented harm. This fund is for anyone who claims they were weaponized, a vague term with no legal definition. He said the commission will decide. 4 of the 5 commissioners are appointed by the Attorney General. That's not independence. That's a fig leaf.
Aren't those commissioners appointed by the president?
No, they're appointed by 4 of them are appointed by the Attorney General, and 1 of them is appointed by the Attorney General in consultation with leadership of this body.
Then Collins pivoted. The administration's budget cuts Violence Against Women Act programs by 25%. In Maine, the Rural Victims Program is critical. The Attorney General said choices have to be made. $539 million is still a lot, but it's less than last year. Collins was not satisfied. Nearly $1.8 billion for political grievances, 25% less for domestic violence survivors. The message is clear. Let's watch.
Attorney General, thank you. I recognize now the chairwoman of the full committee, Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, yesterday the Justice Department announced the creation of a nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund to compensate individuals who were purportedly targeted by the Biden administration, in exchange for which President Trump dropped his $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS for the completely inappropriate leak of the president and his organization's tax data. Amounts for this new fund will come from the Judgment Fund, a permanent law appropriation for paying claims and settlements brought against the United States government. Amounts in the Judgment Fund have traditionally been used for the payment of specific claims against the government or amounts owed for the settlement of those claims, but not for future claims that have yet to be bought. So I have some questions for you. First, has the DOJ ever used amounts in the Judgment Fund to pay claims that have yet to be brought against the United States government based on the settlement of a completely unrelated case?
Thank you, Senator. So the short answer is yes. I mean, we have done this in the past. This was done during the Obama administration, something almost identical in structure to what we announced yesterday. In that case, there were allegations made by Native Americans that the Department of Agriculture had systematically treated them unfairly, and some had filed claims. There was a pending lawsuit, but many had not. A fund very similar to the one that was established yesterday was set up. It was funded by, in today's dollars, a little over $1 billion. And a single claims commissioner was appointed to review the claims and to distribute funds. In that case, at the end, there was around $300 million left over. And the Obama administration had set it up so that that money from the Judgment Fund was distributed to nonprofits and other NGOs. So what we've done with this fund, and by the way, it is true that this is unusual. That is true. But it is not unprecedented, and it was done to address something that had never happened again either. So there is an unprecedented nature of what we did yesterday in response to years and years of weaponization. Just to correct a few things, Senator, it's not limited to to Republicans. It's not
I
limited
didn't
to
say
Biden.
that was.
It's not limited. It's not limited to the Biden weaponization. It's not limited to in any way, scope, or form to January 6 or to Jack Smith. There's no limitation on the claims. So, and the other thing we've done, just to finish up in comparison to what was done previously, is we intend to appoint 5 commissioners. And also, at the end, the money goes back to any leftover funds go back to the federal government, not to nonprofits.
So how will the commission that you've just referenced that oversees the fund determine whether future claims from the fund are eligible to be paid out of it? And how will they determine how much will be paid for each claim? What's the legal basis for those decisions?
So there's commissions that are established all the time where a commissioner is charged with determining the correct amount, if any, to repay a claimant who's asking for funds. So in this case, what we expect is the commissioners will take in information. It's entirely voluntary if an individual wants to apply and assert that they were a victim of weaponization. And the commission can do anything according to what was set up yesterday, from issuing an apology to the claimant to awarding compensation and the monetary compensation. So it depends on the claim, and there will be 5 commissioners who will review each claim. It won't be reviewed by me. It won't be reviewed by others in the administration. It'll be reviewed by the 5 commissioners.
Aren't those commissioners appointed by the president?
No, they're
Who are
appointed
they
by,
appointed by?
4 of them are appointed by the Attorney General, and 1 of them is appointed by the Attorney General in consultation with leadership of this body.
Will the information related to the claims be publicly reported?
So that's a good question. I mean, look, there's privacy laws that exist, so I don't want to sit here today and say every scintilla of data collected will be released, but of course, there's accountability that the commission has, a quarterly report that has to come to the Attorney General, which will certainly be public. There's a process that you all will get information, and there's a FOIA process. So I very much anticipate that the claims that are awarded, the basis and the amount will for sure be made public along the way.
Let me switch to a different issue, which Chairman Moran brought up. Along with Chairman Moran and other members of this committee, I was one of the lead sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization of 2022. These programs are critical to reducing violence against women, ensuring that justice is served, and strengthening services to victims and survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. In Maine, the Rural Victims Program is especially critical. Despite the importance and effectiveness of these programs, the department's budget request proposes reducing funding by about 25%. Why is the department proposing a reduction in funding to combat domestic violence and to support survivors?
Well, first of all, I completely agree with you that these are extraordinarily important programs, and the funds are well used to support these programs. We have asked for $539 million, I believe, in money to support all these programs, and that. I mean, look, there's a lot of money that goes, $190 million for grants to combat, to stop, the stop grants, which is extraordinarily important. And so it is a priority. Obviously, we have to make choices, and the president's budget has to make choices on where to spend that money, but it is extraordinarily important, and the $539 million that we've asked for will go to support all these programs. I mean, so yes, we are asking for less money than the budget had last year, but it's not because we don't view it as extraordinarily important.
Well, I would suggest that cutting the budget for these important programs by 25% is a huge cut. And I hope that's something the subcommittee will take a close look at. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This hearing is a masterclass in how a senator can ask pointed, specific questions and still come away with more questions than answers. Senator Susan Collins is not a fire-breathing progressive. She is a moderate Republican from Maine, known for her meticulous preparation and her willingness to break with her party when she believes principle demands it. She came to this hearing with a binder full of facts, and she used them. The central issue is the nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Collins laid out the basic facts with precision. The fund was announced yesterday. It will compensate individuals who claim they were targeted by the Biden administration. In exchange, President Trump dropped his $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS over the leak of his tax data. The money comes from the Judgment Fund, a permanent appropriation that has traditionally been used for specific claims that already exist, not for future claims that haven't been brought yet. Collins asked the obvious question: has the DOJ ever used the Judgment Fund this way before? The Attorney General said yes. He pointed to an Obama-era settlement with Native Americans over discrimination by the Department of Agriculture. A fund was set up. A single commissioner reviewed claims. In today's dollars, it was a little over $1 billion. At the end, about $300 million was left over, and the Obama administration distributed that money to nonprofits. The Attorney General noted that his fund is different. There will be 5 commissioners, not 1. Leftover money will go back to the federal government, not to nonprofits. He also emphasized that the fund is not limited to Republicans, not limited to Biden weaponization, not limited to January 6th or Jack Smith. It is open to anyone who claims they were weaponized. Collins then asked the question that gets to the heart of the matter: how will the commission determine eligibility? What is the legal basis? The Attorney General said commissions are established all the time. Commissioners are charged with determining the correct amount to repay a claimant. It is entirely voluntary. An individual can apply and assert they were a victim of weaponization. The commission can do anything from issuing an apology to awarding monetary compensation. He stressed that he will not review the claims. The 5 commissioners will. Collins asked, aren't those commissioners appointed by the president? The Attorney General said no. 4 are appointed by the Attorney General. 1 is appointed by the Attorney General in consultation with congressional leadership. That is a distinction without a difference. The Attorney General serves at the pleasure of the President. Commissioners appointed by the Attorney General are, in effect, appointed by the administration. They are not independent. They are not insulated from political pressure. They are creatures of the executive branch. Collins asked, will claims be publicly reported? The Attorney General said privacy laws apply, so not every scintilla of data will be released. But quarterly reports will come to the Attorney General and will be public. A FOIA process exists. He anticipates that awarded claims, the basis and the amount, will be made public along the way. That is not a guarantee. That is a hope. And in Washington, hopes are not binding. Then Collins pivoted. The administration's budget proposes cutting funding for Violence Against Women Act programs by 25%. In Maine, the Rural Victims Program is especially critical. She asked why. The Attorney General said he agrees the programs are extraordinarily important. The department asked for $539 million. $190 million of that is for stop grants. He said choices have to be made. But asking for less than last year is not because they don't view the programs as important. Collins was not satisfied. She said a 25% cut is huge. She hopes the subcommittee will take a close look. The contrast between the 2 parts of this hearing is striking. In the first part, the Attorney General was defending a nearly $1.8 billion fund for people who claim they were weaponized, a vague, undefined term that could mean almost anything. In the second part, he was defending a 25% cut to programs that help victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking, programs with a proven track record of saving lives. The message is clear. The administration has money for political grievances. It does not have money for battered women. Collins did not get angry. She did not interrupt. She did not accuse the Attorney General of lying. She just asked questions, listened to the answers, and noted the discrepancies. The judgment fund has traditionally been used for specific claims, she said, not for future claims. The Attorney General said the Obama administration did something similar. But the Obama fund was for Native Americans who had been systematically discriminated against by the federal government. That is a specific harm with a specific victim class. This fund is for anyone who claims they were weaponized. That is not specific. That is not a victim class. That is a political category. The Attorney General's defense of the fund rests on two pillars. First, it is not unprecedented. Second, it is not limited to Republicans or January 6th. But neither of those pillars addresses the core concern. The concern is not that the fund is unprecedented. The concern is that it is unethical. The concern is not that it might include Democrats. The concern is that it is a slush fund controlled by the administration, paid for with taxpayer money, designed to compensate political allies. The Attorney General said the commissioners are not appointed by the president, but they are appointed by the Attorney General who serves at the president's pleasure. That is not independence. That is a fig leaf. Collins did not get an answer to her most important question. What is the legal basis for this fund? The Attorney General said commissions are established all the time. That is true. But commissions are usually established by statute, with clear criteria, with oversight from Congress. This commission was established by the Department of Justice through a settlement in an unrelated case with no congressional authorization. That is not how the separation of powers is supposed to work. Collins knows this. The Attorney General knows this. But he cannot say it out loud because if he admits that this fund is legally questionable, the entire thing collapses. So he cites precedent. He cites the Obama administration. He says it's not unprecedented. But precedent is not the same as legality. And the Obama precedent he cites was for Native Americans who had been harmed by the federal government. That is not this. This is for people who feel they were targeted by the Biden administration. That is a feeling, not a harm. And taxpayer money should not be used to compensate feelings.